never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stuff.
Am I going to get sued?
Is it illegal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo here with Sam Monson. We are breaking down whatever you guys want us to break down. It's email day, Wednesday show. It's our extra show here, which isn't really extra anymore, Sam. It's just kind of the norm.
It's just the show.
Yeah,
it's just the Wednesday show.
So we have maybe future Hall of Famer, absolute future Hall of Famer, Joe Thomas. He's going to be on the show later today. The great Joe Thomas.
Current Browns legend.
Yeah,
like literally, he's been inducted into the Browns legends, which is a thing.
I'm just thankful that Joe has time for the little people like us.
I know one of
as a Browns legend,
our favorite guests. People ask for Joe back all the time. Well, it's happening today.
Joe is outstanding. He'll be on later today, breaking down Thursday Night Football, the Steelers-Browns matchup.
Yeah, I wonder which way he's going to lean.
Yeah, I wonder. Who was he pushing back on? Oh man, did you see the video of Russ telling everybody on the sideline to yell run pass?
So because of the Denver crowd was chanting down the play clock, people were sarcastically responding to those tweets saying, oh, is somebody shouting pass as well? Apparently, yes. Apparently that was exactly what Russ is looking for.
So
if
you know,
could please just shout when the ball's in the air, that'd be great.
You know the Denver crowd, when Denver's on defense, is going to start yelling run and pass now.
Yeah.
Probably as mockery to their quarterback.
I mean, that's literally something that, you ask kids to do. Just, hey, give your defense a heads up when the ball's in the air.
It's kind of little college rah-rah.
Russ is asking for that to happen in the NFL.
Oh, man. Yeah. Maybe that's why a lot of his teammates didn't love him years later. Come on, Sherm. Come on, Sherm.
This is off air when we were talking about this, right? There was a audio, something. KJ Wright was talking about the fallout of the Malcolm Butler Super Bowl interception. They didn't have a DeMarshawn Lynch play, blah, blah. And he was describing it as in it essentially just drove a wedge into that locker room between. It sounded a lot like defense and offense. Like anybody that wasn't involved in that play was basically like, what the hell? You didn't hand it to Marshawn? I'm done with this. This is ridiculous. And then, the people on the other side. And it wasn't even like, oh, Russ is terrible. Like, why would you fight for this? It was like, he just became the victim, or the displaced focus of the ire that they didn't hand the ball off to Marshawn. It became like just sort of focused on Russ and the offense. But it was amazing to hear that like that play was the ripples of that play probably accelerated the decline of that sort of franchise in the Super Bowl window that they had.
Yeah. You think Russ was on the sideline telling Marshawn, like, come on, man, talk it up. It's like what you do in Little League. Talk it up. Cheer for your teammates. Yeah. Say run pass. Marshawn like, nope. Just here to run the ball.
Russ was giving him the Arthur Smith, it's not fantasy football speech. We're just here to win games. Yeah. it's not about your stats, Marshawn. It's not about your Super Bowl touchdown.
Now you get out there and you yell run pass so Sherman knows what to do. And Earl knows to, drop back. You're in a loud stadium.
Yeah.
Now, granted, if you're on the road, it's quiet when your defense is out there. But still.
Well, there's a lot of people on the sideline. You can get them all shouting pass. That'll help.
Can you distinguish between pass and run? You have to say it a little differently.
What?
I mean, at some point, if you're on the field, helmet on and everything, it just feels like, you just say like, ah. Don't you just hear noise?
No.
You can distinguish between run, pass pretty well?
The words run and pass are quite distinct.
You need a different rhythm to it, maybe.
I'm not 100% convinced you do.
Anyway, what else are we talking about here at today's show? Great show.
First of all, where do people send their emails?
NFL podcast at pff.com. So you guys send us the emails, send us tweets at pff_Sam, at pff_Steve. That one's me. And we can, this is when we answer your questions and everything.
Yeah. So the other thing today is a little update on the bets. It occurred to me after 2 weeks that we might have won a couple of bets already. And we have. We have won 2 bets so far in our season-long tracking bet, whatever, exercise with the fans.
Good for us.
Yeah. We will have the documents. We asked for people to come and help us pretty up the document, the Google Sheet, and a few different people offered help. I kind of gave them all a shot, and I can only pick one. So thank you to everybody that offered. Thank you to everybody that did it. And this is the one that we'll be using. We'll throw it in the description of the podcast, and we'll tweet out a link as well from the podcast Twitter account, and you and I will retweet it as well. But anyway, this is the document, the tracking document. So the bets that we have won already. Number 1, Ty Guy 312 on Twitter. So Twitter is off to a bad start. He said the Browns would start the season 4-0, and he said regardless of the Watson suspension.
Yeah.
So this was back when that was still kind of up in the air.
They're 1-1.
They are. They've already lost, so they are not starting at 4-0. And then somebody called Zach Guest said the Bucs would sweep the Saints in 2022. Remember, they were on this, hadn't won in the regular season since 2018. So he said they'll sweep the Saints 1-0, but he also added that Brady will have an 80-plus PFF grade in both games. He had a 60-something grade against the Saints. So he's halfway there, but that's a loss in this incredibly house-tilted betting slate that we have here.
The people were complaining that we only took one-sided bets.
I thought that was a little bit unreasonable given the sort of the premise of the whole thing, which was like if we're particularly strong on something and you think we're completely crazy, we'll bet on it. But we're not going to do ones where it's like, okay, yeah, I could see your point, so we're in the middle somewhere. But having kind of looked through the list of what these bets are and then after 2 weeks what we know and how that's changed things, I do think that almost all of them are complete guaranteed wins for us. There's like 2 or 3 that could go in a different direction. So what I think we should do is pick a point in the season, I don't know, week 6, whatever, and we'll take a whole new slate of bets from people after 6 weeks of the season. We get a third of the way through, and then we're like, all right, new round of bets, let's have some more that we'll keep track of over the course of the year and see what we get.
Yeah,
seem reasonable?
I think we definitely should be taking some more bets, and maybe we'll be more lenient.
Right, maybe we'll be a little bit more lenient next time.
So you can keep those coming in too, your bets. But where's that document? It's in the description?
It will be in the description of the podcast. There you go. Tyler's thrown it up on the screen there for people watching on YouTube, and we'll get the podcast account to tweet it out, and you and I can retweet it and stuff.
All right, we'll get into the most impressive rookies so far through 2 weeks in the NFL. But first, No House Advantage is changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play in pick'em contests versus other people for the shot at winning $250,000 plus in cash. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot to win big money every day. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20 times your entry if you hit all of your picks. Bet on up to 5 player prop, over-unders, and individual player matchups across every major sports league, including NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up now using promo code PFFNFL at nohouseadvantage.com. It's PFFNFL, nohouseadvantage.com, or you can download the app on the App Store to get a first deposit match up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. You won't want to miss out on this. All right, let's get into some of the most impressive rookies early on here. Who you got?
So one, I was really impressed by Devin Lloyd this week after being very unimpressed by him in week 1.
Jaguars linebacker.
Yeah, their second first-round pick. Second, right? They only had 2. Obviously Trayvon Walker being the number 1 overall pick, and then Devin Lloyd, the linebacker they picked later on. But in week 1, he looked kind of lost and overwhelmed. And every single play pre-snap, Olakun was like getting him to line up in the right place or moving him a gap over, or, every time there was something he was trying to tweak with what was happening. And it's like, all right, Olakun's already a guy that's not necessarily got a track record of playing Pro Bowl level every single year. And now he has to do his own job and make sure the rookie's lined up in the right place every snap as well. It's kind of a tough ask for the dude in a new environment for the first time. And then week 2, the same thing was true. Like, I expected, okay, this guy's grading is off the charts. He's made a ton of plays. Did somehow the light go on? Like, did he just not learn the playbook until now? Like, what happened? But I assumed that when you turned on the tape, that would have gone. There wouldn't be any more Olakun lining him up and getting him in the right place and all this kind of stuff. It was still happening. But after it happened, he would then just go off like a missile to the right place at the right time and make plays. So, I mean, this looked a lot like his college tape in terms of very little hesitation, very little reading and reacting, just immediate diagnosis of the play and moving to the right place. Had a couple of pass breakups, was able to fly to the football, had an interception as well and a tip pass, but he just looked really good. And, we've talked a lot about how hard it is for linebackers to hit the ground running in today's NFL, but that's the game that, like, Jamin Davis hasn't had so far, across a year and 2 games worth.
I have another linebacker to mention. Yeah, so Devin Lloyd, remember, he didn't play much during the preseason, right? I mean, he was
injured.
Right, so he was banged up. So that's why he is just getting out there, getting some reps. Devin Lloyd's a first rounder, but Malcolm Rodriguez from the Detroit Lions, a 6th rounder, pick number 188 in the draft. He's our highest graded rookie linebacker so far, 76.7 through 2 games, 2 grades in the green, solid, outstanding game last week against Washington in the run game, taking on blocks, shedding blocks, made a ton of stops in and around the line of scrimmage. Rodriguez was a guy who we had one of our friends from the Detroit Lions up here recently for a party. We'll just say for a party for Neil Hornsby. And he was like, man, Malcolm Rodriguez, he was just telling us, it was end of training camp, preseason. He's like, Malcolm Rodriguez could be a find. And there was a lot of training camp buzz, both internally with the Lions and, of course, with just the media and everything there. And he's looked good so far. Oklahoma State, 6th rounder, and a part of the Lions' success early on. Grading well, like I said, run game, a couple pressures as a pass rusher. Not as great in coverage the other day, missed a couple tackles. But if you could find a starter in the 6th round, love that. And he's been pretty good.
There seems to be quite a lot of low-round guys this year that have made immediate impacts or higher up on depth charts than people were expecting them to be.
The Bills.
Yeah,
the Bills rookies.
Bills draft Khair Elam, first-round corner. Like, oh, he's going to start opposite Tre'Davious White. He'll have a great opportunity given the departure of Levi Wallace and the way the Bills play defense, and he's not even starting on the depth chart. Got a ton of snaps on Monday night because of the horrible injury, which thankfully seems to have worked out okay in terms of there doesn't appear to be anything major so far. He's passed all tests and no spinal damage and released on his own recognizance for more tests and blah, blah. But that looks like a bullet dodged after a couple of days.
Dane Jackson?
Yeah.
Yeah. But Christian Benford started on that end there. He came out of Villanova. He had a highest coverage grade among FCS players last year, but he's been the starter over there.
Yeah, and then another lower draft pick at corner is Martin Emerson, the corner for the Cleveland Browns. He was, a 3rd-round pick who had some really interesting college tape.
He was kind of one of my guys. He was like a non-model my guy. Liked him.
Does those exist still?
Yeah. I mean, I have deferred to the model more than anything.
Yeah.
But Emerson was a guy where I more liked his tape and a little bit of his production. But I don't think he was a model checkbox. I don't think. I'll have to check.
Was he one of those guys whose measurables stank?
I can look that up. Yeah, but Emerson, I mean, he did play some good ball at Mississippi State.
His measurables, well, depending on the ones you look at. So size was very good. Everything else less so.
Yeah, but he started the preseason right away. Remember, he had that pick 6.
Yeah,
early in the preseason,
took the ball away from a guy,
and so he just continues to impress. Much like a Malcolm Rodriguez, 2 grades in the green for Martin Emerson here through 2 weeks.
Yeah, 40-yard dash of 4.52 at a corner, not great. Vertical leap of 32 inches, which as a corner is.
That's what I used to do. I was a 32.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, not what you want to see from your cornerback.
32 is good for
For a guy
6'2", 270. 6'10", 270.
Sure. It's not good for a corner, though.
No, it's not.
So, yeah, his measurables weren't great. But he had some intriguing college tape, and so far has looked very good for the Browns.
Anyone else rookie-wise? Are we going to wait on the Aiden Hutchinson discussion?
Yeah, we'll do that.
I want to discuss Trayvon Walker quickly because he doesn't have the win rate. So through 2 weeks, we've seen Trayvon Walker pick off a pass, which was very impressive in week 1. Mm-hmm. Just read a pass. Like, never should have picked it off, but he did. Very impressive play. Last week had a few pressures. Was really good in the run game last week. Violent hands. I mean, he had good run grades at Georgia. The question for Walker was putting it together as a pass rusher. I am more of a believer in Trayvon Walker now than I was in April. I'll just say that. Yeah. I do believe in what I've seen, the violent hands. I think improved technique as a pass rusher. Like, I think he can get there is basically the point. And we do have the recent history of Rashawn Gary and Danielle Hunter. I know those were the guys that we were kind of comping him to. Like, hey, these guys are outliers. Walker seems to have I think his trend line similar to those guys. So I'm impressed with Trayvon Walker so far with the Jags. He's got an okay grade. He's fine. Made a couple of those splash plays, but I think he's on his way, and he was very good against the run last week against the Colts.
I mean, I think this is the most likely outcome of the whole, what will Trayvon Walker be, is right now he's a guy who flashes incredible athleticism and ability, but it's way too inconsistent to sort of say, oh, this guy's a great player, he's a dominant force, whatever. It's like every 2 or 3 times in a game, you're seeing a play that makes you go, oh. But, 2 or 3 times in a game is not enough if you're going to play 60 snaps on the defensive line or whatever. You need to see a lot more of those. You need to up that frequency, and that probably will come the longer he plays. Generally speaking, guys are going to get better from this starting point. But that's probably, I think, the most likely outcome of what he was going to be, which is, he's not going to stink outright. He's not just going to be a disaster because he's too athletic. I think he was he would get compared to certain guys that were athletic busts in the past, like Vernon Golson, right, was one who had a crazy combine. Vernon Golson was a disaster of a player at the NFL, and you're like, well, maybe he's the next Vernon Golson. But again, like, even guys like Vernon Golson, as impressive a combine or a measurable as he had, there's 2 or 3 things that never matched up with Trayvon Walker. So Golson, I think, had incredible straight line bursts, but change of direction numbers were terrible. Doesn't apply to Walker. Incredible burst and change of direction. Like that's the thing with him, as opposed to any of these guys that he was being compared with, is each one that didn't work out, you can point to one thing that they don't have in the makeup that's usually quite important and say, yeah, but doesn't have that. Walker has all of it. So doesn't directly apply to any of these guys that washed out. Doesn't mean he won't, but it means that the chances are, just simply by being that freaky, he's going to have a baseline that's higher than some of those guys.
The Trayvon Walker discussion, though, is the fact that because he went number 1 overall, the comparisons are now in a different realm. They're in a different world, right? We all agreed Trayvon Walker, if he was pick 15, was much more reasonable. I'll bet on this athletic upside at pick 15. When you're pick number 1, you pretty much have to produce like the guys that have a 20% win rate in the NFL right now. Myles Garrett, the Bosa's, Micah Parsons. Like those, when you pick number 1 overall, Parsons is now a steal at 10, where he went. But Garrett and the Bosa's were number 1 picks wire to wire coming out of college, right? We knew they were going to be in that mix, and the only thing that would drop them down was quarterbacks. And that's what they were, and that's how they've played at the NFL level. We'll see if Chase Young can get there. That's the only problem with Trayvon Walker. And the argument against picking him number 1 was, even if he becomes Danielle Hunter, would you ever go back and say, Danielle Hunter, very good NFL player, made a big money in a second contract, would you ever take him number 1 overall in a redraft? That's the only...
I mean, maybe if he stayed healthy.
Maybe, but I don't know. That's the only pushback. For me, it's not Trayvon Walker is going to become Vernon Golson. It's, is he going to produce... Is Golson? Golston, yeah. Is he going to produce at Bosa, Myles Garrett level? But Trayvon Walker, more of a believer now than I was in April. I'll say that.
Yeah. I've been really impressed by Sauce Gardner as well, generally. I know he gave up a touchdown last week in a coverage bust, but he's looked really good right out of the gate. more impressive, I think, than Stingley so far. Obviously, 2 weeks, doesn't mean anything, but I've been impressed by how well he's played. And then the other guy on my two guys, I thought Donald Parham looked really good at guard, less so at center when the Raiders had to reshuffle. I think if they had the injury, if everybody's healthy, I think Parham should be their starting right guard. I think that would upgrade that offensive line. That's taking steps in the right direction, creeping back toward average for them.
No, Parham's a model guy. He's
perfect.
And if his center grade's going to ruin the model, I'm going to be upset. But yeah, Parham as a guard, starting guard, I think we liked him there. I thought the teams that needed a guard, like the Rams, were like all in on grabbing a guard at pick 101 or whatever it was. I thought Parham would have been their perfect fit there. He wasn't available. I think he was picked 15 picks before that, whatever it was. But yeah, he's been off to a good start at his regular position.
And then Dominique Robinson for the Chicago Bears, Miami of Ohio.
Yeah, interesting profile, former receiver. That's just developed, very athletic.
A couple of sacks in the opener against San Francisco. Wasn't as good against Green Bay. Only had one pressure in that game, but he's had a lot of buzz through training camp and stuff as well. And he's looked pretty good, I think, through 2 weeks.
How about those receivers?
5th round
in
pick.
General. Drake London's the highest graded rookie receiver.
Yeah, every year it's receiving rookies look impressive.
So we are getting to that point, though, right? We do say this every year, and we've questioned whether or not it's just the nature of the position, right? When you're evaluating receivers, it's easy to see the positives. Hey, I like a lot of these things, but these guys have produced when they've gotten to the NFL. These guys, as in the last 3 or 4 receiving classes, have all produced. And even though we spent all offseason, at least I did, talking about Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown and Devontae Adams and the alpha number 1 moving to new teams and how important that is, we are getting to this saturation point around the NFL. It's been feeling that way, but if we have this another influx of Drake London, Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Jahan Dotson, Chris Olave, all these guys, who am I missing? But we have this influx of these guys that are now instantly pretty good 2s and 3s with the potential to be 1s. I don't know. It's you still need the alpha 1s, but it's easier to round out your receiving.
Well, the other
right
thing
now
is, this was a year that people didn't necessarily love the receivers this year. It's like, there's no Jamar Chase in this group or Justin Jefferson or whatever. It's like this maybe is a step back from the last couple of years. Well, if this is what happens in the step back, like if this is the average year for receivers and you're still looking at the first round after a couple of weeks and like all of them are good, then that's a pretty good indication that the draft is a really good place to be targeting wide receivers. If you need receiver help, you can go and spend $30 million in a boatload of draft picks and get Tyreek Hill, and he will transform your offense. But for for that cost, you could take multiple swings in the first round and maybe get 2 really good wide receivers. And I guess it depends, what you need from the addition. If you're a team that has nothing at receiver, maybe you want to go and platoon and try and get 2 or 3 guys that are rookies and can all come in and make an impact from their rookie deal. But if you're a guy that has your receiver core is passable, but it doesn't have any number 1 alpha, then sure, you're going to target an A.J. Brown or a Tyreek Hill or whatever.
So it's early on. We've only seen a couple weeks of these guys, but there is this nice combination of some late rounders, some high expectation first rounders playing well so far through a couple weeks. Don't forget, PFF now has an app featuring industry-leading fantasy football advice, PFF's exclusive betting dashboards, the latest premium football analysis, all in the palm of your hand. I would also read all of Sam's articles on there. I like to read Sam's articles. I share them to all my friends. Look what Sam wrote this week. What an idiot.
Well, you say that, and yet I am not quite, but almost undefeated in bets this year. After 2 weeks, I'm 7-1 on bets that have been publicly, pushed.
And we're doing a lot with internal metrics and stuff like that, right? We want Sam to be the most shared writer, because I've had to take a step back from the writing game right now, but we want Sam to be the most shared writer. Oh, can we? Okay, so go get the PFF app, read Sam, share it with all your friends. Can we announce what you told me yesterday?
No, I don't think so. Probably best not to yet.
Okay. Wait till it's
right in stone.
Okay.
Set. Locked
What
in.
if I screw you over because I'm a little jealous?
Well, then that might affect our podcast relationship.
It might. Sam might have this great opportunity that I won't have.
Not like a job or a career.
It's not a job.
opportunity.
Yeah, it's not that great. I mean, it's kind of
nothing
cool.
that exciting.
It's kind of cool. You can throw it on a resume though.
That's true. Yeah.
Throw it on a resume. You're not a 3-time Hall of Famer though.
I'm not.
Like I am.
No. I am, in fact, in no Halls of Fame.
You are.
Hall of Fames.
You're in the
Halls of
PFF
Fame.
Hall of Fame, man.
Oh, that's true.
You're in one.
Yeah, I forgot that existed.
I counted that as one of my threes. One of my three. I'm in PFF, North Reading, and soon to be UMass Lowell.
Soon to be.
Yeah.
Feels like I should be in some kind of IAFL Hall of Fame. I don't think one exists, though. Maybe I have to set one up and put myself in.
You should spool that up.
Yeah.
And first member.
For inaugural member, me.
And you're the only voter? All right.
Yeah,
Congrats.
exactly.
We'll have a
Perfect.
ceremony here.
Speaking of real Hall of Fames, though, Halls of Fame.
Perfect. Look at you segueing.
Thank you. They've just announced the new nominations for this year's Hall of Fame, the real one, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Canton, up the road there. So I think we should do a little, we've never done this before, actually, on the podcast. We should do a little yay or nay. Are you in or out on the first year guys? Because there's like 125, guys that have been nominated this year, so we're not going to go through all of them. But the first year guys is actually a really strong class.
It is.
So I just want to run through them, and let's go yay or nay on those guys. So number one, easy one to start with, and not just because he's on the podcast.
Because he's on later.
Joe Thomas.
In.
Offensive tackle.
Put him in.
Cleveland Browns.
Put him in.
I think Joe Thomas absolutely goes to the Hall of Fame.
Is he going to be the first offensive line Hall of Famer with a full career of grades? He was drafted in 07, much like Revis. Full career of PFF grades.
Who are the most recent ones that have gone in? Orlando Pace, don't have a full career for him, right?
I don't think we might have 1 year of his. Baselli, we have nothing because he played like 3 years. Ogden, we've got 2 years.
2 years.
06, maybe 3 years, but he was incredible in those years at the end of his career.
The three highest PFF grades for an offensive tackle over a season are Trent Williams last year, one of the tail end seasons of Jonathan Ogden's career, and Joe Thomas. That's
Pretty
the
good.
company.
Pretty good. So Joe Thomas, absolutely in.
Darrell Revis.
In.
Yes. 09 Revis is still the greatest single season of cornerback play that PFF has seen.
He's the best corner of his generation.
Yes.
Better than Sherm.
I agree. And, we can debate all the time about what the zone versus man coverage stuff and what that allows you to do and, the impact that it has and blah, blah, blah. But when you watch what the Jets were doing on defense when they had Revis Island, and it was literally take that guy, go over there, nobody else will be within 25 yards of you, have at it.
And quarterbacks still tried to target him. That was the cool thing, right?
Because he went and he followed the number one wide receiver wherever he went. And so you had to.
At the time, right, we were just starting as PFF. Football Outsiders was doing tracking. And at the time, Nnamdi Asomugha was playing football. And I think Football Outsiders started before PFF. Nnamdi was like never getting targeted by their metrics, and then our metrics started to match that as well.
He had a year where he had like 26 targets or something stupid.
Yeah, but there weren't people breaking down the all-22 as much as they are right now. People weren't going snap by snap on Nnamdi, really seeing what was going on. He was more like reputation based. The fact that Revis was covering the number ones and getting targeted, and we saw that he was like, they were 2 for 10 targeting Randy Moss and like 1 for 8 targeting Steve Smith and all this stuff in certain games was nuts.
There were a few things with Nnamdi. There was the reputation thing. There was the fact that he played right cornerback the entire time, which I don't know. I haven't checked this actually recently, but at the time, remember, we act like we're talking about the 1950s, but it's a very
kind of was
right. It's a very serious point that football in the early 2000s and football now is not the same game. It is dramatically different in a lot of different ways. And at the time, there was a right hand bias to where where quarterbacks would target. Like the left corner would be targeted more than right corner because most quarterbacks in the NFL were right-handed, and they automatically were looking at that side of the field more. And at that point, the only quarterback that did not have a right-hand bias in his target distribution was Peyton Manning, which tracks with that dude was just some sort of mechanical, like, computer wizard. Everything that you think could be influenced, he wasn't influenced by it. So anyway, one, Nnamdi essentially hid on the easier side of the field and didn't get as many targets naturally. Two, generally speaking, the corners opposite Nnamdi Mao were awful. So it's like, well, why would you target that guy when you can just line your best receiver over there on the other side and go nuts? So it made sense. But what was amazing about Revis is even corners that tracked receivers didn't follow them into the slot. They would go left or right, and then when he went into the slot, it was somebody else's problem. Because the slot's a different position, essentially. Revis tracked a number one wide receiver wherever he went. If you moved your guy into the slot, Revis would go with him. If you moved him left or right, Revis would go with him. So you were left with the choice of going into this game, do I acknowledge that Andre Johnson is simply not going to be a part of this game, or do I say, I'm going to have to throw the ball at Revis 10 times because Andre Johnson's over there. That's what I got to do. So that was, again, part of his amazing legacy, is that he forced you, despite the amazing coverage, to still test him in a way that doesn't happen for most corners.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy slam dunk for Joe Thomas, Darrelle Revis, both from the class of 2007. I want to get into the rest in a minute, but first, the NFL action is in full swing here at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. We're talking touchdowns, big plays, and even bigger wins. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win, and you get $200 in free bets if they do. If that's not enough, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Right now, for every leg you add, you can boost your winnings up to 100%. With payouts bigger than ever, why bet on football anywhere else? To make things even sweeter, you could throw down on stepped-up same-game parlays once per game day. Once per game day. I got to read this better. All season long. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF to get $200 in free bets if your team wins when you place a $5 bet on any football game. It's code PFF, only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, who else do we have for first time?
So those are the two
eligible
slam
Hall of Famers?
dunks.
Yeah.
Then I think it starts to get more interesting. Dwight Freeney.
He's a slam dunk. Yes.
You think?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't want to. He's the best pass rusher of his generation.
Yes.
I mean, from 03 was his draft? 02, 03?
See, something like that.
I think it was 03. I'll look him up.
He was contemporary with Brian McKinney, which was 03, right?
So from then, because when you get into like 2011, that's when Von Miller shows up. That's when J.J. Watt shows up.
Well, this is back when generations were like a decade, before now, where it's going to last 25 years with players still in the NFL.
So Freeney, I'm looking him up on my PFF IQ page, and IQ defaults to the latest team for a player.
Arizona Cardinals legend?
No.
Who did he play after the Cardinals?
I don't think he ever played a snap for them, but he must have signed there at some point. No, he did play some snaps there. Wow.
Damn it. Texans?
No.
I'm out. Who did he play for?
Detroit Legends.
No.
Detroit Lions legend, Dwight Freeney.
Dwight Freeney played for the Lions?
In 2017, he played 5 games.
Wow.
For the Detroit Lions.
McKinney was 02. Was Freeney also 02?
Freeney was 02. So, pick number 11, 2002. We have his grades back to 06. 06 was their Super Bowl year. He was the 5th most valuable based off of WAR. But we're talking pass rush grades, 90, 84, 90, 82, 86. I mean, he was just good.
He was also one of those guys that, so his spin move is one of those things that's going to go down in the annals of pro football history as a legendary thing, like Deacon Jones' head slap, these moves that specific passer, that Reggie White's club move, or hump move rather. Freeney spin move is as good as anything that's ever been deployed in a football field to rush the passer. It would wreck people consistently. It's not like people didn't know it was coming. Like late in his career, he's still destroying people like Andrew Whitworth, who's still playing at like an all-pro level with the inside spin whilst playing for the Cardinals. Late career Freeney. That I think has value. The fact that you can say this guy had a thing that nobody else could replicate and is the best that's ever been done at that's Hall of Fame worthy.
There's also a scheme element, and I'm gonna push back against this very argument with one of the guys later. But Freeney was like the prototype for the scheme that the Colts wanted to run, which is from Tony Dungy, from that whole cover 2 era, where it was like, remember it's him and Robert Mathis on the other side, Raheem Brock. They had all these undersized edges. They were like, don't play the run on the way to the quarterback, but you're going to get the quarterback. And we don't care how well you play the run. And Freeney and Mathis were perfect at that. They were the prototypes for that type of offense and executed it extremely well. I think Freeney is a Hall of Famer. So that's 3.
Yeah, I think he should be as well. Chris Johnson.
Chris Johnson.
You
typed him in as CJ2K.
I know, yeah. I confused myself.
No. He's enough.
Despite the fact that he's one of however many people now that have hit 2,000 rushing yards in a single season.
Yeah, and people like you won't care because other people are going to start doing it all the time with the 17-game schedule. It's going to happen a lot now.
I don't know it's going to happen.
Maybe not with
only like 4 bell cow running backs, which is good.
That's true. Maybe it won't. So I say no to Chris Johnson.
Yeah, I agree. I think his peak was too short, which is my biggest problem with it. I think where he has an argument is the sort of direct comps to Terrell Davis, though. Because, the Hall of Fame has set some interesting precedents with who they've let in, which I think makes some of these arguments more difficult to shoot down than they would have been a few years ago.
Maybe. I
also think
you have to. Curtis Martin is in, which still,
I know.
Doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Curtis Martin was
Martin is
slightly better Frank Gore.
Yeah, Curtis Martin is original Frank Gore with some turbo boost.
With 7 fewer years.
Yeah.
Than Gore.
I don't love the Curtis Martin thing. I will say about Chris Johnson is he is one of 4 people I can think of off the top of my head that were so damn fast that it changed things completely. Him
and Jamal Charles of that.
See, I don't think Jamal Charles had that. He had a different. His blazing speed wasn't the thing that made him so good. But everybody's fast in the NFL by and large. So people that are fast to the point where it makes NFL players look stupid are very, very rare. And you see it in terms of angles from defenders because you can't rewire your brain in the middle of a game to that kind of thing. You've been used to this guy's running, I'm running, this is the angle it takes. It's an internal subconscious thing. You don't think about it because you've just been doing it for so many years. It's ingrained. So when a guy comes along and they're so much faster than everybody else that it fundamentally alters the angle you have to take by a noticeable margin, you can't fix that on the fly. Your brain is not capable of processing that during the course of a game. So the only outcome is you just end up looking like an idiot because you run to a spot 2 yards to the left of where you should have been running. And by the time you get there, Johnson's away off in the distance. So the 4 players I can think of that have done that in a long time. Chris Johnson was one of them. He would get through holes that shouldn't have been there because his speed was so fast, it broke ankles. Randy Moss did this. I think Tyreek Hill does this now.
For sure.
And Bob Hayes, who was so fast that they had to invent zone coverage to stop him.
Bob Hayes. I thought Dalvin had elements of this, but it's not as consistent as Chris Johnson. It's not that level of speed.
So
that's fair. You're still no on Chris Johnson.
Yeah, I think that's a notable thing. I think that's laudable, but it's not Hall of Fame worthy.
It's not the Hall of Very Good. No, I don't know if you've heard that before.
It's not the Hall of Very Damn Fast, Chris. I'm afraid you're just not in.
Is Patrick Willis in, by the way?
I think so. Yeah, he definitely got in, right?
Because his running mate.
No, he's not. Okay, hang on. We'll get to that in a minute. So Navarro.
He's in the second list. Okay,
yeah,
Navarro
Bowman. Next up.
All right. Remind people, who is Navarro Bowman?
He was the guy that came along right after Patrick Willis. At one point, the 49ers playing a 3-4 had inside linebackers of Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, and they were both all-pros.
There was a point where they probably were the 2 best linebackers in the NFL.
Yeah.
Top 3 to 5 at least.
I remember they went from Takeo Spikes and Patrick Willis to then Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman. They had and then they got Chris Borland out of nowhere, who played 1 year like a Pro Bowler and then just hung him up.
Yeah, there was an incredible run of inside backers in San Francisco and early retirements, including Patrick Willis, who's on our list later. Navarro Bowman, Hall very good.
I tend to agree.
He's very good. I was looking up his stats. He's really got a 3-year run.
I think he's close.
He's the 3-4 inside backer version of Tony Baselli.
He was so good.
3 good years
for a while. So we're no on him. We'll get to Patrick Willis later. James Harrison.
So my first instinct was no. I'm trying to be
hard
line in the sand here. Mm-hmm. I did look up Harrison's stats, and he was undrafted, but in 2002.
Yeah.
So we have his data back to 2006. Harrison was as good as Dwight Freeney as far as overall impact, better all-around player, completely different scheme in Pittsburgh and all that stuff. For as long, I would say, for James Harrison.
He's also got, with the Eli Manning argument of your entire Hall of Fame resume is built off 2 Super Bowl runs. I mean, Harrison has one of the most iconic plays in Super Bowl history of intercepting Kurt Warner and the Cardinals on his own goal line and then making it all the way back to the other goal line.
Right.
Surely, but like that literally changed the outcome of that game.
Yeah. So, I mean, Harrison, I do have it pulled up here. WAR rankings, 07, 3rd, 8th, 1st, 12th, 15th, 11th. So he was like a top 15 player at his position for about 5 years, and a top 3 to 5 player at his position for 4 years.
His peak he was really good at his peak. I also think there's something, I don't even know if this is a good argument for a Hall of Fame or anything, but I love seeing a guy where all of a sudden they get a shot to do something totally different, and it turns out they're really good at that as well. And you kind of get left with the impression that it almost doesn't matter what you ask that guy to do. He's just a really good football player or athlete or whatever. Remember when he signed for the Bengals and they decided to move him to an off-the-ball, like, strong side linebacker?
2013, he became a Bengal.
Yeah. So they decided, no, we're going to take this guy that's been like not a prototype, but been a proven dominant force as a 3-4 outside linebacker. And we're going to ask him to be a 4-3 strong side linebacker back when that was still a thing. And he just like wrecked house as a run defender. Like he became Bart Scott as a 4-3 Sam linebacker. Like completely fish out of water, but just decided to hell with it. I'm going to go dominate this one specific area, and was really good at doing that.
Yep.
And then he finally, got back to a normal position for him.
And even in Pittsburgh, remember, they always had the 2 edge rushers, but they would drop them into coverage. They still do. They drop them into coverage back then, especially a ton. So he would drop into coverage 250 plus times per year, one time 329. So one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, losing all of those pure pass rush opportunities to go play in coverage. Never had a bad coverage grade either, right? The responsibility out there isn't crazy, but he just he played in space pretty well. So I think James Harrison's a yes. Patriots legend, by the way. That's who he finished his career with.
I forgot that.
2017.
I think you've talked me into that. I think I'm buying James Harrison Hall of Fame case. Jerry Evans, one of the best guards of his generation for the New Orleans Saints.
I don't think so.
I wouldn't put Jerry Evans.
It's my guard bias.
I think offensive linemen deserve to be recognized, but I'm not quite sure he has a Hall of Fame case.
Like among guards right now,
I'm not sure he was the best guard that the Saints had in that period.
Of the PFF era, Evan Mathis will say is iffy. I don't know if he was just a great scheme fit everywhere he was. And whatever. He graded well for us. Zach Martin is a Hall of Fame guard.
Yes.
In the PFF era. Marshall Yanda.
Logan Mankins probably.
Maybe Logan Mankins.
Yeah.
That's 3. Quentin Nelson could get there.
Yeah.
It's early. I think that might be it. Guards in the PFF era, off the top of my head.
I'm not buying Jerry Evans. Carl Nicks might have been a better player in the same team. Yeah. No. Cam Chancellor.
So this is where I'm pushing back on my own argument. Cam Chancellor's the prototype in the scheme that every team tried to replicate. In every team that tried to replicate it,
didn't succeed.
Did not do very well. Gus Bradley's still having some level of success, but
as long as he doesn't face the Chiefs.
Yes. This week. Gus Bradley's going up against the Chiefs this week. It's going to be we're going to play our single high.
In the latest must-win game.
Going to play our single high
Colts
against the Chiefs. Cam Chancellor, I think I'm saying no. I just don't. He was very good. He was very good, and the prototype in that scheme, the enforcer at strong safety. He was, remember, he came out of Virginia Tech at like 225 pounds or whatever he was, and people actually wanted him as a linebacker. He actually may have played some linebacker at Virginia Tech, if I remember correctly. But he's a strong safety for the Seattle Seahawks. 4th rounder, he wasn't the prototype for the NFL at that time, but he was what Seattle wanted in their drawn up scheme. So that was great. He may have set the tone in that Broncos game, right? Patrolling the middle and scaring Wes Welker and whoever else they had over there. But I don't think I'd put Cam into the Hall of Fame.
I don't think I would either. His strongest argument, I think, is that Steve Atwater just went in. So if you're looking, again, precedent and looking at guys that kind of paved the way, and sometimes the Hall of Fame, I think you look at it as there's a backlog at this position and you can't put this guy in before you put this guy in. Well, Atwater just went in, and if you're looking at the sort of closest Cam Chancellor analog throughout history, I think Steve Atwater is probably that guy. So that at least is an argument that you can put a player like that in the Hall of Fame. I think I'd lean with you, though, and say, look, my Hall of Fame has stricter entry requirements. I'm not sure Chancellor makes it.
That's it. So he actually was drafted in the 5th round. again, I think the biggest argument for Chancellor is that every time a big, strong safety comes out, teams are like, oh, this will be the next Cam Chancellor. Just like every team's looking for the next Earl Thomas. And it never works. You can't replicate what Cam Chancellor did. He also only played 8 years, and he's very good. Very good player.
Yeah.
Most valuable safety in the league in 2013 using PFF WAR, the year that the Seahawks won the Super Bowl.
I also think it's difficult trying to parse out who gets the credit for that defense. You know, it's nobody that tried to replicate that defense could make it work. And was that because they couldn't find their Cam Chancellor? Was it because they couldn't find their Earl Thomas? Was it because they couldn't find their Richard Sherman? Or was it the fact that you need all three of those guys at the same time for this thing to work?
And Bobby Wagner.
Right, yeah.
And good pass rushers.
And pass rushers, Cliff Averill, you know, they had a ton of guys. So I think that's very difficult. I think each one of those guys is going to get that argument at some point. It's like, well, he's the guy that made it tick. You know, nobody else had one of those, so nobody else made it work. So, yeah, well, nobody else had any of that. That's why it didn't work.
Unfortunately for Cam Chancellor, if you're looking at that group, though, I think you're going to say Sherman Hall of Fame, Earl Hall of Fame, Bobby Wagner Hall of Fame, and you're going to say, well, Cam Chancellor, prototype, strong safety, very, very good, but I think he's going to miss out.
Yeah, I would say that from my personal intuition, I would suggest that in a higher, if you were ranking the hierarchy of which guy was most important to making that defense function, it's either Earl or Richard Sherman, and I'm not 100% sure which. Then it's a gap, and then it's either Bobby Wagner or Cam Chancellor. He's either the third or fourth most important part of that thing, which makes it difficult to sort of use as a reason to get him in.
And oh, by the way, having Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill, and Frank Clark weaving in there at times too, but like having pass rushers to get after the quarterback was helpful.
The final first-year eligible, Shane Leckler, punter. Punt God before punt God was punt God.
I don't know. Look, everybody's got weaknesses. My weakness is any level of special temes research.
Well, I thought we'd throw this in there for our punting friend that likes the punt discussion.
I'll let him vote.
Well, I imagine he put him in. Oh, not again.
Yeah, but he can't. If you're a punting guru, you can't just put in every punter.
No.
You have to have standards. I assume our punting friend that always tells us to talk more about punting, I assume he has standards, and he's going to either hear Shane Leckler's name and say, yes, that's my God, that's our guy, or no way, we have others that we're missing here.
Yeah. I mean, I would make the argument that if Shane Leckler doesn't get in the Hall of Fame, you're essentially saying a punter can't get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Leckler's probably in for a punter, I guess.
Yeah, he absolutely is in for a punter. I mean, Leckler is, I think, easily the best punter of his generation, and he's a guy whose generation spanned, quite a while. So I'd be pretty shocked if, like I say, if you're not putting Shane Leckler in the Hall of Fame, it's because you believe no specialist belongs in the Hall of Fame.
All right, we'll get into some of the other non-first-year finalists. But first, our newest sponsor is revolutionizing the world of sports betting and fan engagement by making sports fandom profitable. That company is Symbol, the stock market for sports teams. Symbol was a PFF sponsor last year, and they're back for this football season. Symbol lets you trade pro and college teams like stocks and even earn cash dividend payouts when your teams win. Symbol takes the thrill of sports betting and turned it into the stock market to give you a platform where you can buy and sell sports teams and profit from your sports knowledge. So download the Symbol mobile app for iOS by searching SIMBULL in the App Store. Use the code FOOTBALL to receive a free team stock valued up to $150 upon signing up. Whether you want to invest in an up-and-coming team like the Chargers, the GOAT in Tom Brady and the Bucs, or the new top dog in the Buffalo Bills, Symbol allows you to buy and sell team stocks based off who you think is on the rise. I get the...
You okay?
We're going to power through. Create a free account. Enter code FOOTBALL to get a free stock valued up to $150 and start making money off your sports knowledge right now. SIMBULL. Symbol.
Well done.
Let me take a sip while you talk about the next guys.
Yeah, I just wanted to list the guys that are finalists from 2022 renominated for next year. So essentially guys that were first time eligible last year, didn't make the cut, and are back up again this year, just to put some context into the guys we've just been talking about. So Jared Allen was first year eligible last season. Jared Allen versus Dwight Freeney is a good discussion, I think. Allen didn't get in. Willie Anderson was first time eligible last year, really?
Why do I always feel like he was
older? Yeah.
We have PFF data on him.
I know, I guess. I just
played in that era.
Rondé Barber.
I think Willie played with Munoz. It's like, oh, Willie was with Chris and Munoz.
Rondé Barber, arguably the best slot corner of all time. Devin Hester, the best return man of all time, not kick returner, return man.
Yeah.
Torrey Holt, Andre Johnson, Reggie Wayne, all first-year eligible last year. Zach Thomas and Patrick Willis. And so Patrick Willis didn't get in last year.
Yeah.
And DeMarcus Ware. Again, DeMarcus Ware, Jared Allen, Dwight Freeney.
Oh, man, this is tough.
Isn't it? It seems easy when you don't have the context, but then when you see Patrick Willis didn't get in first shot.
Freeney is perceived as better than Jared Allen, in part because he has a Super Bowl and played for the Colts with Peyton Manning.
And also because his one trick was better.
Yeah.
Like,
but he was also like pure speed rusher.
Yeah.
So he would beat to the outside, Freeney, and have that killer spin move. Allen was just good in one. Right? Won a lot as a pass rusher.
Yeah.
Jared Allen.
All right, that's what I mean. He didn't have the sort of the signature move.
Yeah.
That would go, oh wow, that's just unstoppable.
So Jared Allen, maybe. He's close. If I put in Harrison and Freeney, I probably have to put in Jared Allen.
I don't think we need to litigate those ones. I just think it's worth listing them as context for the guys that we're turning down. These are the guys that didn't get in a year ago.
Willie Anderson, just because I'm close to some people that are doing some research that are making the case for Willie Anderson. And part of the case is the bias against the right tackle. So I appreciate Willie maybe stepping up for right tackles everywhere here. Neil was telling me the other day, back in the day when they were voting for All-Pro, it was really just all two left tackles.
Yeah.
And the only time right tackles made it is when their team had like a crazy record.
Yeah.
It was whoever the Bears starter was in like 01 made All-Pro. And then the great Leon Searcy, the year the Jaguars go 14-2 in 99. Right. The great Leon Searcy. I mean, he was right up there with Baselli. So Willie Anderson got screwed when it came to all of those awards because he was a right tackle.
Yeah, the Bengals at one point, remember they had Levi Jones at left tackle, Willie Anderson at right tackle. Then they drafted Whitworth and put him at guard.
Yeah, that's pretty good. It's a pretty good group. All right, what are we doing here? Who else?
That's our Hall of Fame discussion.
Okay. Are we finishing that? Or we're not going to go through these guys?
No, as I say, that was just for context.
What do you do with those receivers, though?
Well, this is the problem.
Torrey Holt, Andre Johnson, and Reggie Wayne. If one goes in, they all... is Andre Johnson the best out of that group?
Yes.
But Torrey Holt's consistency was incredible.
Torrey Holt's first 6 seasons was record-setting. And remember, this is an NFL with, Jerry Rice sets all the records, and then Randy Moss sets all the records. Like, Torrey Holt's first 6 years were nuts.
Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison. I mean, Peyton was awesome, but he had those two guys for the majority of his career. Was Wayne that much worse than Marvin Harrison?
No, well, the other problem is they just put Isaac Bruce in. So you've already sort of I don't want to say let this stand, you know what I mean? But like Isaac Bruce is now your standard.
Yeah.
So if Isaac Bruce gets in, you could make a pretty compelling argument that all three of those guys belong.
For a lot of receivers, though.
And
there's a lot of
And that's
receivers.
the problem with this whole thing is we went from, there's this giant backlog of receivers and a guy like Chris Carter, who retired essentially second on every list, couldn't get in. And now we've gone from that to, we're letting Isaac Bruce in, who was, really good, but all of a sudden you can draw a pretty strong parallel between Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt, Andre Johnson, Reggie Wayne, Steve Smith. There's only going to be more of these guys over the next few years because the numbers have gone through the roof. And now all of a sudden we're going to have like a Hall of Fame that just has a wing for wide receivers because there's a million of them.
It's easier to accumulate numbers, too.
That's what I mean.
It is, and it's hard to play that mental game of, Torrey Holt's numbers were incredible, but it was at the start of the offensive explosion. So...
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, like comparing across eras is always a nightmare, and it's only going to get harder for receivers. Like, how do you compare Torrey Holt's numbers to like an Art Monk?
3 dome receivers too.
Also true.
Dome receivers. Art Monk, stud.
Yeah, but like, how do you fairly contrast and compare what Art Monk did versus what Torrey Holt did?
No, you can't.
Exactly, and yet that's
even
literally
when you
the
try
job.
to, something it plays in your head.
Right, and that's literally the task that they've set in this.
All right, where to? What else do you want to cover here?
Well, so we have 2 choices. Time's dragging a little. We covered Monday Night Football on the PFF NFL Daily.
2 blowouts. I think we covered it on the Daily.
So the only question is, do we want to take a stab at essentially just talking about how absurd the Bills look right now and prohibitive Super Bowl favorites and all that kind of stuff, or just jump straight into the Explain the PFF Grade segment? I
mean, just to touch on the Bills quickly, they do look incredible. they look like, so offensively, they had games last year where they did look unstoppable. They didn't have that level of consistency last year. They certainly, I mean, they scored 6 against the Jaguars that one game. But they had games where they looked unstoppable. But we're now at a stretch of the Bills last year into this year. Unstoppable against the Patriots in the playoffs, against the Chiefs in the playoffs, even though they lost. Week 1 against the Rams, pretty much unstoppable other than like a couple fluke interceptions from Josh Allen. And then week 2, 41 points against the Titans.
And just think of the teams they're beating. I mean, their first two, like they lost to Pittsburgh week 1 last year. This season, week 1 was against the defending Super Bowl champions, and week 2 was against the number 1 seed from the AFC a year ago. Now, okay, Tennessee doesn't look like that team right now, but I still think they got made to look an awful lot worse than they are against the Bills, who aren't just beating people, but are just destroying them. Like, so far, teams are hanging tough for a couple of quarters, and then Buffalo just like kicks into an extra gear that these other teams don't have, and by the end of the game, it's like, wow, how did that score get so out of control?
I mean, so that is just super team type of ability, right? Where it's like the longer the game goes, the better we are, we're going to pull away. The more football is played, we're the Buffalo Bills, we're going to drop the hammer and win. So that's what they feel like right now. So credit the Bills. They're looking great.
Done. Okay, so explain the PFF grade. I think this is a good thing we should do every Wednesday, where there is a, PFF grades come out Monday morning-ish, Monday 10 a.m. type of time, comes out in drips and drabs through that period of time. And every week there are some grades that, don't necessarily make the most immediate intuitive sense based off the box score numbers or what people saw on the highlights and all those kinds of things. I think it's a good opportunity for us to pick one each week and explain a little bit why the grade is different to what you imagine it should be.
We'll go Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, we'll start with Aiden Hutchinson. We'll do 2 this week because we didn't do 1 the first week.
So Aiden Hutchinson for the Detroit Lions.
3 sacks in the first half, Steve. I saw them on the highlights. Red Zone made a big deal of it. Why is his grade not great?
So a few reasons. We're grading every single play. The first part is just the volume. Aiden Hutchinson rushed the passer 46 times. Doesn't take away from the fact that he had 3 sacks, but a little insight into the PFF grading. We will give more credit to the quality of the win than we will the tick box of whether or not you had a sack on the play. So essentially, you can earn a higher grade if you beat the left tackle quickly in, say, 2 seconds, 2.2 seconds. You win a one-on-one matchup quickly. You're going to get a higher grade than a play where the quarterback holds the ball, you didn't win, and then you do make a nice play, and you have a cleanup sack after 4 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever it is. So 2 of those 3 sacks were cleanup. Like, good job, Hutchinson. High effort plays, whatever you want to say. I mean, this is like my Bud Dupree argument all the time. Bud Dupree is really good in cleanup situations. He plays hard. He finishes plays. But the dominant one-on-one win is not only more valuable because it relies less on other people to do stuff, but it's also just harder to do consistently. In other words, for Aiden Hutchinson to have those 3 sacks, good plays. He needed Carson Wentz to hold the ball, or his other teammates to get a pressure, or whatever. Like, so it's less impressive in a grading sense because other stuff had to happen. Whereas winning one-on-one in 2 seconds, that's all you. It's more impressive, it's more consistent, and it's more valuable in the long run.
Yeah, and the other sort of strand of logic there is that once you've beaten the blocker, what happens after that is it's not random, but it's not in your control.
Right.
What is in your control is I go one-on-one against an offensive tackle and I win or lose. And then from the point that has happened, whether or not the quarterback gets rid of the ball, whether the quarterback is Daniel Jones and just stares into the distance while the sack bears down on him, like all of these things are not within your control. And they determine whether it's a sack, whether it's a pressure, or whether it's nothing at all. Because if the ball's gone and he was looking over there, he didn't even know you beat him.
Right.
So it's literally nothing. It's not even a pressure.
So, even just using that as an example, from a PFF grading standpoint, Aiden Hutchinson beats the left tackle in 2 seconds. He gets a grade for that. Whether the quarterback double clutches and gets sacked, or gets rid of the ball and it's only a hurry, or it kind of gets rid of the ball and it becomes a hit, it's essentially going to be the same exact grade for Aiden Hutchinson. He did the same amount of work.
Yeah.
The difference in his stats, sack, hit versus hurry, was all determined by the receiver, the coverage, and the quarterback, other stuff. So to sum that all up, Aiden Hutchinson on 46 pass rushes, which is a lot, He had 6 pressures. It's not a bad number. 2 of those pressures were unblocked, so something scheme-based. And 2 of those 3 sacks were of the cleanup variety. His overall pass rush win rate was only 8.7%. That is well below average for a pass rusher, and it was on 46 snaps. So that explains Aiden Hutchinson with a 57.3 pass rush grade, despite having 3 sacks.
To give you an indication of how large a number that is in terms of pass rushing opportunities, Nick Bosa, Rashawn Gary, and Von Miller all have fewer than that in 2 games.
Yeah, that's another way of another great way of putting it. And it's if you're just looking at a guy's sack totals, it'd almost be like saying this quarterback had 20 completions. That's really good, when you don't know if he attempted 40 passes or 30 passes, right? We don't always think about opportunities when we hear sack totals, because we just don't see the denominator all the time like we do in other stats.
The last point, and the future upcoming guest, Joe Thomas, Browns legend, made the point of, hey, a lot of the sacks in the NFL are hustle plays. You should get credit for those because these are important plays and they are valuable once you sack the quarterback. All true. And, he does get credit for that.
We do give credit, right?
We're not penalizing him. He's not getting downgraded because they were cleanup plays. He is getting a better grade than if he did nothing on the play, so he is getting credit for that hustle play and for finishing those plays and for staying in it and hanging tight and getting the sack at the end of it. We are just saying that it is a qualitatively worse pass rushing play than those elite pass rushes where you whoop a guy in 2 seconds and are bearing down the quarterback, irrespective of what happens after that.
All right.
So move on to the next one. Explain the grade. Lamar Jackson. Baltimore Ravens put up a ton of points, put up a ton of yards. Lamar had his big, however many yard run that was, touchdown run. But Lamar's grade wasn't great. Justify yourself, Stephen.
We're talking about the rushing grade in particular?
No, I'm talking whatever.
The overall? I mean, even with the overall grade, I think he got a -2 on one of the worst passes of the week. So Lamar's passing grade was going to be fine, was going to be very good, until in that Dolphins comeback, legendary comeback, Lamar tried to become a highlight in that thing by throwing a pick 6 to Xavier Howard. So that's a part of it, right? So they're up a score with about 5 minutes left in the game. The Dolphins very easily could have tied it up on a pick 6 that Lamar left inside in crunch time. So from a passing grade standpoint, that was that. From a run grade perspective, he did have the 79-yarder, got proper credit for that. I think admittedly a challenge in the rushing grades, though, is parsing out someone like Lamar with his special rushing ability versus, say, like the average quarterback. Lamar running for a 79-yard touchdown, I would say, is something, if it was a wide open hole, but his speed and his breakaway ability, 5 guys turn that into a touchdown in the NFL.
Yeah, and
at the same time, like Daniel Jones has 70 plus yard touchdowns if they're left wide open.
And he got an elite grade for that individual play. So
he did.
And the problem is, you look, the rest of his rushing grades, or the rest of his rushing attempts, you look at the other ones, and it's very difficult to find another sort of definitive positive grade from those other rushes relative to what you would give anybody else. Like if you're saying, okay, this play's a positive grade, that's fine, but then you're boosting an awful lot of runs in the NFL would be the point, which isn't helping him. And the critical thing that's dinging that grade is he fumbled.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the fumble in a second. I just want to get to like the long run, because this is what a lot of times in our grading, here's what happens. We're grading, so people are so used to yards triggering something in their minds to think more is better, right? Which of course it is, like in the football game. But if Lamar runs that ball at, say, the Dolphins 40, and it becomes a 40-yard touchdown, it's only slightly less impressive than the 79-yarder. Now, the 79-yarder is impressive because he did have some Dolphins tracking him down, and only Lamar is going to run away from those guys, or a handful of guys are going to run away from them. And like I said, it got the proper grade. But a lot of times, a quarterback throws a great deep pass, it's 20 yards in the air, and a guy runs it, and it's just for a 20-yard touchdown. Other times, it's the same pass, and then the receiver runs for 40 more yards, becomes a 60-yarder. It's the same exact pass. In this particular case, the run is a little bit different, but the fact that it was so deep into the Ravens' territory becomes a 79-yarder. He was going to break away no matter what. So it just adds to the yardage total.
The bottom line is he sort of individually accounted for a rushing touchdown that, let's say, wouldn't have been there otherwise.
So
right?
the other plays that are in there, he got stuffed on the goal line. So these are plays where he didn't earn positives, that he had opportunities to earn positives. He got stuffed on the goal line. He got stuffed on 4th and 1, right? Those are plays where he ran and didn't add value there. And then there's the fumble, right? So a fumble on 9 carries, right? A fumble, we're going to grade that poorly, right? That's as bad as you can get for a grade. Generally, he fumbled once and only on 9 carries. So we're talking about one of the lowest grades you can get out of only 9 plays.
And PFF grades
that essentially offsets.
That's the thing. I mean, I was going to make the point that, people look a lot of the times at quarterbacks in terms of touchdowns versus interceptions, the ratio. And generally, okay, we do it differently. We're looking at actually the quality of the play, not necessarily the result it had. But the point being, if you had a quarterback that had 1 touchdown, even if that touchdown was incredible, but he offset it with 1 interception, you would say, well, that's not great. It's not a good day. If Lamar has that 1 touchdown that he created out of nothing, essentially, in the run game, but then offset it with a fumble, it's not that great a day. And PFF grading is going to treat the fumble the same whether or not they lost it, because it's random, essentially. When you put the ball on the ground, again, you have no control outside of recovering it yourself, whether or not that ball is turned over or not. It's a random bounce of the ball that can cost you the turnover, and turnovers are huge.
Here's the thing with the fumble. It wasn't a run. So it goes to his rushing grade because
it has to go somewhere.
It was a drop snap on a presumed handoff. It was on 4th and 1 at the goal line, or deep into Dolphins territory here. So that ended up being a big play. The Ravens recovered, but it didn't matter. It was a turnover on downs. We're not necessarily putting the value of the play in there or whatever, but a fumble is bad. We don't know if you're going to recover it. A dropped snap, it has to go somewhere from a facet standpoint, so it's going to go into the grade. Like Tom Brady dropped a snap as well, so his rushing grade was like a 30 or something, because that was his only rushing attempt, right? That was his only play. Not every fumble is the quarterback's fault, the way we do it too, strip sacks, things like that. This was a missed snap where we clearly downgraded.
Yeah, I mean,
Lamar
to give you an
Jackson.
indication, his fumble grade was 29, but his rushing grade was like double that, because he had a bunch of good. He had the run that turned a touchdown into, turned nothing into a touchdown.
So that's where context comes in.
Yeah. So essentially, I mean, Lamar is effectively being dinged for 2 extremely bad plays: a fumble, which is effectively a turnover in quality, whether or not it results in one on the stat sheet. And then what should have been a pick 6 if Xavier Howard, a corner with some of the best hands in the NFL, didn't drop it.
And other than that, he played really well.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing, too. He only dropped back 34 times. So, like, 1 really bad turnover-worthy play on a low-volume passing attempt, 1 bad fumble on a low-volume running game. It's going to affect your grades. That's all.
I mean, and with the, if you're sort of arguing that, hey, the run was so special, it should have dragged it all up anyway, you kind of have to ask the question, well, how good a grade can that 1 play possibly get in order to drag this further up? We gave it a really, really good grade, but it's 1 run.
Look, I can see that argument, right? Lamar might be the only one who can have a 79-yard run in the NFL, and maybe you have to break the scale for him and say no one else could do that.
But even if you said that, my point would be, let's say instead of the sort of run forwards and you debate how hard or not it was to stay away from the trailing corners or whatever. Let's say the guy did something truly ridiculous, but it was 1 play. He's in his own 5-yard line. It's a Barry Sanders run, right? He makes 17 different people miss over the course of the next 85 yards, and ends up trotting into the goal line. It's a touchdown. There's nobody in the history of the game that can do that. It's a one-off. It'll never happen again. It will go down as one of the greatest plays in the history of humanity. It's still just 6 points.
It's 1 play.
Right.
You can't.
So
you don't get 12 points for it.
Right, that's my point. Like, how good a grade can you give that in order to come out of the end? Like, if he did that, but every other play he had, was an average or nothing play. Like, what can you say? The end of the game, when you're analyzing that, what do you say that guy did that game? Yeah. Well, he came out with one of the greatest plays we'll ever see, but that was it. Like, that's all he did. So that's, I don't want to say that is exactly what's happened with Lamar, but my point being, you can only grade one play so high, you know, because it is ultimately only ending up in 6 points.
So we're doing our best here to explain it, give you some insight into the grading process, where the perspective is,
This is what we
weigh, what we don't weigh, that type of stuff. I'm sure somebody's not going to be happy with the explanation.
Oh, most people won't be, I'm sure. But anyway, this is a good place for the emails. If you, every week, you know, Monday, Tuesday, if you see a grade and you don't understand why it's where it is, shoot us the guy you want us to talk about, and we'll hit it on the Wednesday show. NFLpodcast@pff.com. That will be a weekly Wednesday segment. All
right, all that said, we'll get to Joe Thomas?
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to ask him? Does he feel like he's a Hall of Famer? I wonder.
I don't know.
We'll have to ask him.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's get to Joe Thomas and preview a little Thursday night football. All right, welcome in and welcome back to Joe Thomas, the future Hall of Famer. We'll see. We'll see if he thinks he's a Hall of Famer.
I thought you're gonna let him know, you know, 3-time Hall of Famer over there.
I am a soon to be 3-time Hall of Famer. But Joe, how many Hall of Fames are you in so far?
Well, that's a good question. That's the joke in my family that I've been inducted to all the Hall of Fames that don't matter as of this point. But we got a big one that potentially could be coming up next summer.
All right.
So it sounds like he still has you beat.
He probably has a bunch.
Yeah, he's talking him down, but he still sounds like he's got your 3 beat.
He can't even count. He's not in the PFF
What are
Hall
your
of Fame.
3? I'm very curious.
So PFF, we have a Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Is that like on your W-9 when you fill it out to become an employee?
No, you got to earn that.
Yeah.
Would you like to pay $5 extra to be in the PFF Hall of Fame?
I think we should do that, though. I like your thinking.
We'll check that box.
So, that well earned.
Okay,
PFF.
good start.
I'm in North Reading High School Hall of Fame, and then the UMass Lowell Hall of Fame with my teammates from 2001 and 2002. So sharing the glory with them in a few weeks.
Nice work.
Anyway.
I mean, it's not often you get a great guest like Joe on and he immediately feels jealous of your accomplishments.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure. I don't want to embarrass our guest, but Joe is up for the real Hall of Fame next year.
Yeah.
We did just discuss this on the podcast, Joe. We would put you in right away. Would you put yourself in? Do you think you've earned it?
You know, I don't think it's ever fair to discuss your own merits for the Hall of Fame. I think I've put together a good resume. I think it stacks up, but there's a lot of great potential Hall of Famers that are going to be voted in this class, and it would just be an honor to be put in with some of those great names that are out there, like the Darrelle Revis, the Dwight Freeney, those type of guys.
He's got a teleprompter over there, doesn't he?
I know, he's good at this, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
You can tell he's transitioned into the media seamlessly. You know, we've gone from 10,000 straight snaps in the NFL to now we just got smooth, you know, polished answers. You know, rejecting the premise of your question. This guy's a master.
Well done. Well done.
I was curious, Joe, with the Hall of Fame stuff, the Browns Legends thing, how old are your kids? Like, is this actually relevant to you being like, you see, Daddy was actually good at this stuff back when he was playing, you know?
Well, that's why this stuff is cool to me right now, is because my kids have nearly no recollection of me playing in the NFL whatsoever. My oldest daughter is 9, and she's the only one that even remembers being in a stadium when I was playing. But unfortunately, her only memory of me being in the stadium and playing was her sitting on the floor of First Energy Stadium, eating peanuts that were being fed to her by my mom. And so as far as me being in a jersey, there's nothing. So to be able to go out like I did last weekend for the Browns Legends Club and be able to put on a 73 jersey and my kids see me, and I actually have the opportunity to say, see, I wasn't lying. I actually played for the Browns a few years ago. You may not remember it, but people in the stands still might remember that little stretch that we had at the end where I won 1 game in 2 years. It was such a big moment in their life.
Well, we appreciate your playing career, so congrats on being a Browns legend. And we do want to have you, we wanted you to here to preview the Browns-Steelers game, Thursday Night Football. 2 AFC North teams, 1-1. I want to discuss the matchup in general. Pittsburgh, such great history and all that stuff. What was it like going up against the Steelers? And what are some of the different challenges that a Mike Tomlin coach team might bring to the table versus some others?
Well, it's always a great battle between the Browns and the Steelers, even though the Browns have been on the losing end of most of those battles since they came back in '99. But I think because of the history that these teams have, because you play each other twice every year, it always seems to be a little bit closer than maybe most people expect. Even when I was there, we weren't very good. We still played the Steelers pretty tough a lot of times. And I think playing against a Mike Tomlin coach team brings a lot of challenges because he's always gotten the most out of his guys. He's always had a disciplined team. And as a defensive-minded head coach, I played for a bunch of them. A lot of times what you see is they don't like going into the game with any question marks about defenses or even on the offensive side of the ball. If they had something in practice that they didn't love, they just threw it out because they would rather have guys with a simplified game plan that they know exactly what they're supposed to do so that they can just cut it loose on Sundays and they can play fast, or in this case, Thursday night. And so what you got a lot of times was a very fundamentally sound defense that you were going against. They had every gap covered. They knew for every single shift in motion you had, their adjustment, they were all on the same page. You weren't going to get anything easy from them. You were going to have to fight them the entire way. We always said against the Steelers, you're going to have to go the long, hard way because they're not giving up any easy throws over their head. Dick LeBeau was their defensive coordinator for pretty much my entire time when I was there. And he always played a bunch of cover three where he was not letting anybody over the top. He was going to give up every inch in the run game grudgingly. And you really had to be perfect to be able to take that ball and go all the way down the field and score a touchdown.
What do you make of this year's version of each team's offensive line? Because they've kind of come from different places over the last couple of years. The Browns have had one of the best offensive lines in the game. Pittsburgh's offensive line, it's graded badly for us, but they've been able to protect it pretty well by Roethlisberger, having the fastest average time to throw in the NFL. It looks fairly similar to that this year in terms of quick passes, horizontal stuff. They're not stressing those guys out. So what do you think of those two units as a former offensive lineman, Joe?
Sure. Well, I'm a big fan of the Browns offensive line. I think they've been playing really well this season, and they've been in the top 5 on offensive line ratings for the last 3 years, really since Kevin Stefanski got there, because across the board, they really don't have weaknesses, and they've got the 2 best guards in the NFL. And when you have great running backs in the backfield like Chubb and Hunt, you're able to utilize what you do really well, which this season and in the last couple seasons has been getting your guards on the perimeter, allowing them to show their athleticism, letting them run, getting outside, blocking linebackers and safeties in space, and then getting Chubb and Hunt with a full head of steam with their feet to the line of scrimmage to be able to kind of pick a hole and then to turn whatever is blocked for into +4 beyond that. So a lot of times, if you got to play block for 2, Chubb, Hunt, those guys are going to get you 6 because they're so tough to tackle. They're always going to at least make the first guy miss, or they're going to slow him down where they're going to then be able to fall forward for 2, 3, 4 more yards and always put you ahead of the sticks so that you're never stuck in a 2nd and long situation after a first down run. And as an offensive coordinator, that does a lot for you because you have confidence being able to dial up those runs every single week because you know that you're never going to get stuck in a 2nd and long and put Jacoby Brissett or whoever is back there at quarterback in a very difficult situation on 2nd and 3rd down. And I think that's one of the things that you've seen in the first couple of weeks of the season already from the Browns offensive line is they're wearing teams out by the second half because of the volume of runs that they're calling, but also what they're doing up front, making your 2nd and 3rd level guys run and try to tackle these big running backs that they have in the backfield.
When you said the best 2 guards in the NFL, you mean as a duo rather than number 1 and number 2, right? Because if
I'm saying their duo is the best in the NFL. It's always difficult when you're saying who is the best, who's the second best at any position, right?
I was just
because really it's more tiers, and that's I think that's kind of how you see the positions. Like I see my quarterbacks in tiers. I see a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. It's not really fair to say who's the best because you know what, week in and week out, it's probably going to be different. Who's that best quarterback this week versus who's the best quarterback next week? And that's the same thing with guards. I'd take Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio in my top 5, no matter what the list is for offensive guards in the NFL. Now, who's number 1? Who's 2, 3, 4? I don't know. I'll leave that up to you guys.
You said he was seasoned in the media. He doesn't know. I mean, this is our editors won't let us. I think in tiers like you, Joe. I think in tiers because it does make sense. The editors want 1 to 32 or 1 to 64. Right. You have to rank them.
I was just like, look, if we're gonna put Wyatt Teller ahead of Zach Martin, we're gonna have to put some sort of disclaimer across Joe's appearance. With the Browns fandom here.
How does Nick Chubb? Can you win with a run-first attack in today's NFL, right? It's not just the passing games are exploding. It's the NFL wants pass games to explode. Every new rule is like, all right, not only protect the quarterback, but make it easier. This year, they want to focus on illegal contact, because illegal contact wasn't getting called enough the last couple of years. We need some 5-yard automatic first downs for the passing attack on 3rd and 19, right? We just need that in today's NFL. So a run-first attack, is that enough to say make a playoff run in today's NFL?
It's really tough, and that's why you see teams across the league putting so many of their eggs in that quarterback basket. That's why the Browns went out and, in spite of a lot of criticism, decided to go with Deshaun Watson and trade for him this offseason, because you understand if you want to be consistent for the long term, you got to have that elite tier 1 franchise quarterback, because it's so hard to keep together a rushing attack for a decade. Because in order to have a good rushing attack, you have to have 5 good offensive linemen. You got to have at least 1, maybe 2 tight ends that can block. You got to have a receiver that's willing to block. You got to have a quarterback that's good at the run fakes, that's good at being able to get the football to his running back in different situations, hold that backside defensive end in a lot of those boots, which sometimes it sounds easy, but there's a lot of quarterbacks that just don't commit to it because they don't even think about it. Hey, I hand it off and then I'm out of here, right? But a lot of times, especially those outside zones, like having a quarterback that can hold that backside guy so he's not crashing down hard on the backside of the line of scrimmage to take away some of those cutbacks, that makes a big deal and a big difference in a lot of those runs. Same thing with a quarterback that can run some of those RPO type things and kind of make it a little bit more of a weapon in the running game. But I will say for the Browns, the reason that their running game is working and has worked is because of Nick Chubb's ability to hit the home run. And that's typically where the difference between a running and a passing attack is the greatest, is your ability to hit the home run, which, as we saw last week when Browns played the Jets, the home run was the difference in that game. The Browns crushed the Jets in every aspect of the game except for big plays when it mattered. And if you're not able to dial up at least 2 or 3 big plays in a game, it's really hard to win. I don't care who you play against. But the Browns can do that in their running game because Nick Chubb is one of the fastest running backs in the NFL, and he can get outside and he can break off 40, 50, 60-yard game-changing type runs where most running backs in the NFL are just not fast enough to run beyond an NFL defense.
So along those lines, like how does a quarterback like Jacoby Brissett specifically change the job, change the responsibilities of offensive linemen? How does he affect that dynamic?
Mm-hmm. Well, Jacoby's not much of a running quarterback. He's a decent athlete, but he's not exactly Deshaun Watson when it comes to ability to get out of the pocket and make you pay with his legs. And the same thing when he's in the pocket. I thought in week 2, he showed a lot of improvement over week 1 with just his calmness with his feet. He wasn't getting happy feet. He was going through his progressions. His feet were leading him to his throws, and then his throws were a lot more accurate. And I think when you have that type of quarterback as an offensive lineman, it allows the defensive line to be a little bit more creative with their pass rushes. It allows the defensive line to get outside of their pass rush lanes a little bit more because they're not quite as worried about a quarterback who's going to find when you leave your pass rush lane, and he's not going to make you pay as much with his legs. I guarantee if when Deshaun Watson comes back, those defenses are going to be a lot more measured in their pass rushes. It's going to be much more about collapsing and constricting the pocket than it is, hey, I got to just beat this guy, and if I can get to that spot, I can get a sack. So it makes it a lot harder when you don't have a quarterback that's going to leave that spot all that often, and he doesn't make defensive linemen pay when they take a risky pass rush move, and maybe they're supposed to have the outside gap, but they're going to give you the up and under, or they're going to give you the spin move and take that inside because they feel like, hey, as long as I win, I'm going to be able to get the sack in the backfield, and that quarterback will never break contain and never get outside the defense when all my defensive backs have their heads turned and are running down the field with my receivers, because I just don't have to worry about that with this quarterback. And so playing for a quarterback that is willing to run definitely makes it a lot easier because you're getting, let's say, maybe 90 or 95% of the pass rush that you normally would when you have just a pocket passer who's going to stand in one spot.
One of the numbers we use to kind of help define how difficult it is, in addition to what you're saying, for an offensive lineman to block, is just time in pocket, time to throw, whatever. And Jacoby's definitely on the lower end or the higher end, right? 2.9 seconds on average. It's not every one, but you've got some extended plays here and there, but it's a lot longer to hold your block, right? On the other side, Pittsburgh is getting rid of the ball extremely quickly. Not as quickly as last year, but Big Ben last year had the quickest time to release. Mitch Trubisky in this offense in Pittsburgh, very quick getting rid of the ball, a lot of underneath stuff so far. Is that enough to neutralize, say, a Myles Garrett? I know Jadeveon Clowney's out on the other side, but how does Pittsburgh handle Myles Garrett? Will the quick passing game affect that? How does that affect how you would block too as an offensive lineman?
That's going to be a really fun cat and mouse game to watch in this game on Thursday night, because what you saw last week against the Jets with the Browns defensive secondary is they were having a lot of communication issues. Same thing in week 1. So as you guys know, when you have communication issues in the secondary based on shifts and formations and the coverages that you're trying to get to because it's the best for this personnel grouping with this motion and this shift, maybe aren't being communicated, and then you have guys on different pages, which leads to huge busts and huge plays. And so you can't have that. So what do? You go to the simplest defense ever. It's man coverage, right? And a lot of times what you're going to see is, I think this weekend, a lot of times I think what you'll see is when teams have a hard time communicating different coverages, they just go to man because it's easier. You don't have to communicate as much. And all you have to worry about is communicating the switches or a lot of the underneath rub type stuff. And so for the Browns to move forward to their Thursday game, if they do play a lot more man coverage and they are playing some of those defensive backs tighter to the line of scrimmage, I think it has the ability to take away maybe some of those quicker throws by the Steelers. And also it gives the defensive line the ability to be able to think about, all right, this ball is going to come out. So I need to make sure that I'm watching the quarterbacks drop and I'm getting my hands up to try to take away some of those quick throwing lanes that the Steelers are going to try to be able to exploit with Mitchell Trubisky to try to get the ball out of their hands so that the pass rush is not as much of an issue when you do have an offensive line that could be a little bit shaky trying to block Myles Garrett.
All right, Joe, we'll get you out of here on this. We like our guests to, offer a little prediction for the game every single week. So I assume, based off, your cap and your Browns legend status and captain of the dog pound over there, that you're going Browns. My question is, how big would the line need to be before you were saying, you know what, the Steelers are actually going to cover this?
So I was about to take the Browns by $1 billion. And so to answer your question, it would have to be $999,999 before I started thinking about taking the Steelers in this one. Because I love the Browns to bounce back from what was a gut-wrenching collapse against the Jets to put their best performance of the season on film on Thursday Night Football.
So I think we can safely put Joe down for taking the Browns.
Let's say Joe takes the Browns there.
Yeah.
Oh, the poor Browns. Is everybody okay in Cleveland after that? Like the broadcast was doing montages on the last time they were 2-0 and the price of gas and Jurassic Park was in the theaters and all this stuff. Are they okay after Sunday?
I think there's so many people that are still in shock, that were in disbelief, like myself. I was at the game and it was like when the game ended.
You're like, what?
I still was not able to accept what had happened because 5 minutes before that, I was with those announcers. I was celebrating the 2-0 start. One of my friends came to see me towards the end of the game and we were talking about what a great game it was, how it was fun to watch. Like the Browns played flawless football. They were so much better improved. Jacoby Brissett was so calm in the pocket. We found a way to win with him, and the running game continues to impress, even though everybody's doing everything they can from a defensive standpoint to try to shut down Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And all of a sudden, literally everything that's improbable that needed to happen in order for you to lose happened in succession. It's almost like when we were talking about the running game earlier on in this podcast. The hard thing about running the ball is because in order to even get 4 yards, you have to have all 5 offensive linemen do the right thing. You have to have the running back do the right thing. You have to have a tight end do the right thing. You have to have the receivers do the right thing. So you have to win like a 7 or 8 team parlay in order to get a successful 4-yard run. In the passing game, you only need 2 things to happen: a quarterback throw the ball to the guy that he should, and a receiver to make a play on the ball. That's it. It's easy. So that's why it's impossible to lose a game the way that they did against the Jets, because it was like a 9-thing parlay, and all those things were like 1 for 500 were the options of. I'm not a bettor, as you can tell. 1 out of 500 that those things were going to be able to happen, and all of them happened right in a row, and it was a collapse that I'm not sure people in Cleveland are going to forget for a long time. Unless they beat the Steelers on Thursday, then nobody cares.
Nice.
They're 2-1 in first place in their division.
The game ends and Joe's just standing there going, no, set it up again. Do it over. We're not ending it like this. We're going to set it up again. 30 seconds left, and we're going to win it this time. I'm not having this.
I don't know if it's better or worse in the locker room, but you have to bounce back almost immediately for Thursday Night Football. Put that in the rearview mirror. And Thursday Night Football, Browns favored by 4.5 over the Steelers. Joe has the Steelers, the Browns, by $1 billion. Yeah, Browns by $1 billion.
That's right.
And we'll hold you to that. Thank you to Browns legend, future Hall of Famer, and maybe future PFF
favorite guest of the show, I think. We've had so many requests since the last time you were on, Joe.
Oh, man, that's awesome. I appreciate it. I love coming on with you guys. We have the same brain as far as how we look at the game of football. And I can assure you that when I get my W-9 from PFF, I'm checking that $5 box to be included in the PFF Hall of Fame.
Let's go. Joe's hating on my Hall of Fames. But understood.
A little bit.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys.
All right, special thanks to Joe Thomas for joining the show once again. Even though he's poking fun at my honors, always great to have him get his insight in there. I've been honored. We got to make our picks too.
Yeah.
Steelers
4.5 is
4.5 points in Cleveland.
Browns favored 4.5 at home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is this the last we see of Mitchell Trubisky? By the way, that's part of this, right?
I've already looked this up.
I'm looking at the schedule
next
right now,
week. I think is actually tough again. If
next week they've got they're the Bills at the Bills. No, what are they?
No?
Oh, the Jets.
Okay, so So
October 2nd, they have the Jets. This could be the perfect time, kind of like your first mini bye, to get Kenny Pickett in there. But it is Jets, Bills, Bucks, Dolphins, Eagles.
Yeah.
But I know you're a big fan of kid gloves.
I just don't want to start him.
Literally, kid gloves.
I just don't want to,
Kenny Pickett.
Your debut.
Hands, Joe.
Here's the Buffalo Bills. It's very good. Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
I just don't want to say, hey, Kenny, congratulations on your starting debut. It's against Buffalo. Have fun. Okay, week 2, fine. Like get his feet wet against the Jets, and then go on your run of nightmare.
It's home against the Jets, then you go to Buffalo, home against the Bucks, at Miami.
I mean, it's not fun, but you're gonna have to deal with some tough defenses.
It's not a good road. It is not a good road at all. So this could be the end of Mitchell Trubisky unless he balls out.
Yeah. Doesn't seem tremendously likely off what we've seen so far.
I think he does.
Really?
Right, the Steelers covering the 4.5. And I've had it like at least 3 or 4 games right so far through 2 weeks.
True.
So I'm feeling good. I get the Steelers. Will the Browns be able to bounce back? This has to be difficult after that heartbreak coming back 4 days later.
God, I don't like either side of this. I think the Browns are better. They're at home, but 4.5 is quite a lot.
Feels like a big number.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to lean that side, but I hate both sides of this bet.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
You're taking the Browns.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't like it either. I wouldn't touch it.
But you're taking the Steelers.
But I'll take the Steelers because we're obligated to make a pick. It's in the contract.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Joe Thomas, we already said he'll go to the Hall of Fame. Look at this. He is a pro. I feel like my resume is good.
It's fun. Well, yeah.
I'm honored to be there with Darrelle Revis.
Immediately was just like, well, that's a shitty question, but if I have to answer it, I guess, I've put up a reasonable resume so far. But
I mean, that's what offensive line play is. It's repetition and routine, and he's got it. He's got the answers.
It is. I mean, I found generally that offensive linemen tend to be the most articulate players in terms of explaining the game, thought process behind things. They have a very good understanding of what's happening generally from my experience. Joe Thomas and Andrew Whitworth, I think, are maybe the 2 smartest that I've heard talk about stuff. And you can hear it. He says, I'm not just saying this because of this, but a lot of what he says is things we've said all the way along, including that analogy he made about, the parlay that has to happen just for a successful run play.
We need that part clipped.
Yeah, which is a point that we've made for years, but actually I don't think we have made for years. You know what I mean? It's something I know we used to say a lot to try and explain this whole passing is more efficient than running stuff and all this kind of thing. And then we kind of went away from that and just haven't brought it up for a long time. And I hadn't even thought of that until he made the exact same analogy there with his description. So, yeah, there's a reason people love Joe Thomas as a guest.
And the way he described it, too. For a 4-yard run to occur,
yeah,
everybody has to do their job.
But for a 10-yard pass, only 2 guys need to be on the same page.
because yes, the offensive linemen have to pass block, but two guys can lose their block. If you get rid of it quick enough, right, you could still complete that pass. So anyway, thanks to Joe Thomas. We are trying to have more, guests for our Thursday night previews. He was perfect for the Browns-Steelers game. And that's it for our Wednesday show. We'll be back again tomorrow previewing the rest of the Week 3 NFL action. See you tomorrow.